Louis, thank you for joining us. We're here in Nashville, Ludi, the Fall 25 company meeting. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate maybe some insights about your experiences with provider enterprise management.
Sure. Well, thanks for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. I've spent my whole life in healthcare, was a paramedic, EMS director, hospital administrator. And then the last 25 years, I've been at HCA, wonderful company. And my job was to recruit and employ the doctors. And so when I left, I had 1/3 of the country, had about 2,000 providers, about 3,000 staff, and 500 locations. And so I've been retired for a year, and now I'm a consultant. And I love working with doctors. I tell people you're either born to this or you aren't. And I just think it's fascinating. I think they're incredibly valuable to the healthcare system. And I do get calls and text at least 3 times a week. And somebody says, who's the best, in this specialty? And it's my pleasure to help them get to where they need the care. But the call is always the same. Who's the best? And to work with people that are that educated and that professional is just fantastic.
When you think about that, you talk about recruiting. It's such a challenge to recruit physicians. There's a shortage and a increased demand for their services. What is one of the biggest challenges that you have during the recruitment process?
Well, early on when I started in 1999, we were very small. There were only a couple of us. And then about 5 years in, we built a dedicated physician recruiting team that's very professional. They tap into all the databases and they know the docs and they're just really very professional. But back in the beginning, we were all doing it. We were whining and dining docs. And I think so much of it is selection. And you can look at the CV, but when you actually dive into it, what you're looking for the dean of the medical school to say he or she is one of the 3 or 4 best, or I'd let them work on my family, or like we talked about earlier, specifically going after chief residents. I loved the son of chief resident because their peers have already voted them a leader. Now, they may or may not be the best clinician, but chances are they are. But they're definitely probably the best person to work with. And so much of this is not just technical skills, but personality and the ability to get along. I would go out and give a talk on the business of medicine to new physicians, residents, and fellows. And I would say you have to be able, you have to be affable, and you have to be available. And if you've got those 3 things, you're going to be very busy and very successful. So much of it is getting to know the doctor and trying to find somebody who's going to have a long-term relationship with you. And that relationship over the long term, the recruiting feels like dating, but once you sign the doc, keeping them and retaining them is more like a marriage, and you can't take the relationship for granted. And the whole idea is to try to have happy, productive, and loyal medical staff and physicians working on your team. And so much of that is built on trust, transparency, having good, accurate reports, but just having a relationship that says, hey, I've got your back. I know that you went to school for a very long time to really take good care of patients. And if you could cover the bases of quality, compensation, and call, that is a winning formula for keeping happy, productive doctors in your system.
That's really good advice. Love hearing about from the provider lens. And you've had so much experience over the 25 years. What do you think has changed the most on what providers are looking for when they're looking for a future employer?
So I think you've gone from a Marcus Welby type of thing where the doctor has a calling and they're like a country doc and they're going to practice until they pass away at their desk type of thing. And they were all things. There were no specialists. There were no hospitalists. There were no traumatologists. So literally they delivered the baby and they did everything for your whole life. You've moved from that generation to a baby boomer generation, which is aging. I consider myself a boomer. But as that population goes, you've got a whole nother generation that's coming out, and they have a challenge that none of us had, and they have school loans. And a lot of these docs come out and they owe $250,000, $300,000. I know I was giving a talk one time and I would always poll the audience, who's got the most? And there was some guy there, he had $800,000 of school loans. And everybody groaned, at least they weren't that guy. But the other thing that to me is very interesting is the request for work-life balance, because a lot of the people coming out, their mom or dad was a doc and they never saw him because they were always at the hospital or always in surgery, and they don't want that. They want to have kids, they have hobbies, they have recreation, they want to see the world. So you've got school loans, you've got work-life balance. And then the last part, which is fascinating to me, is increasingly physicians are marrying other physicians because of the training hours. That's who they're around. And for years, that was not the case. And so if you've got the husband with 250, the wife with 250, they may or may not be in the same specialty, but they're coming out to practice medicine. The recruiting package that you put together to attract that couple and keep that couple practicing really requires creativity. And the beautiful thing about Ludi is I think you've simplified physician compensation because it is very complicated and only getting more complicated. Physicians come out and they might have a base salary, an RVU or percent of net, but on top of that, their professional services agreement, they have call coverage, they might be teaching the GME program, they might have telemedicine, they might have APP supervision. And so to simplify that and to have a system that brings clarity and accuracy to compensation, to me is a formula for success.
That's some really good insights talking about financial sustainability, especially for the physicians. It used to be just providing financial stability through base compensation and maybe some work RVU compensation as well. You're talking about how can I help you pay off student loans? Right. How can I help you relocate to this community to help you get in a position to be financially stable?
Yeah, so as somebody who has been very involved in recruiting really my whole life, you really have to interview the physician and find out what's important to them. You also want to find somebody who has a good work ethic. I tell people I wish there was a blood test for work ethic because everyone thinks they're a hard worker. And so some of my questions would be, instead of saying, are you a hard worker, I'd say, describe a good work day. They'll tell you what time they get up and what time they go home, and if they're obsessive compulsive enough to lock all their notes before they go home so then I can drop a bill. Those are the people you're trying to look for when you're doing that. But if I could tailor a total compensation package that addresses your needs versus your partner's needs, again, I think that's a winning combination because people are just at different stages in their life. The last thing I tell people is once you recruit the physician and they're already on your payroll or they've come through an income guarantee or maybe with no financial assistance, they just join the medical staff, but they're a specialist in a critical area or badly needed primary care doc, you have to stay plugged into that doc because at some point they may want to go teach in GME. They might want to go part-time. They might want to go hourly. There's a famous case of a cardiologist, and he was getting older, didn't want to retire, didn't want to do GME. And we said, what if we put you on an hourly basis and you're the walk-in cardiologist? So you're not in the cath lab, you're not taking call, you're not doing any of that stuff. But if somebody has chest pain and it's not bad enough for the emergency room, they want to be seen right now. And this guy literally ran an in-house cardiology walk-in clinic, which was fantastic for his 25 partners because it was great patient service. It met a need. And he did that for at least 5 or 6 years before finally retiring. And so if you've got flexibility in your compensation plans, chances are you're going to attract and retain the better quality doctors.
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of themes about moving away just from a pure standardized model, but having something that has standardized functions of it. Right. So you can administer it correctly, right, but also being dynamic so you can attract and compensate and reward those providers that have maybe different work schedules, right, or different types of services that they're providing there. Is there a specialty that you're seeing that's more challenging to recruit for nationally?
It comes and goes. It really does. I mean, I think overall there's a shortage of doctors in general. There's a real shortage of really good doctors. But if you look at the key specialties that a hospital needs, it's probably orthopedics, oncology, cardiology, neurosurgery, OB, and then general surgery. And those are really the big ones. But depending on the market, there's never a surplus. There might be a sufficient number or a shortage. And then you have to decide, well, do I have to employ them or can I just affiliate with a big group? That's always preferred. That's great because we want the doctors to bill and collect and to be wildly successful clinically and financially. But sometimes, depending on the market or the situation or your competitors, a hospital may be forced into actually employing the docs. But again, I think it goes back to the relationship and trying to listen to what the doctor's asking for. So most recently, I've done a consulting arrangement out west for 8 weeks. And it's been interesting as I go into these 20 doctors, they handed me a list and they go, these doctors need to have their contract renewed. Well, the first thing I did was I just went out and met with them. And they said, you didn't bring me anything? I said, no, I'm just here to listen. What do you want in your next 3-year contract? And it was fascinating. None of their answers were the same. All their answers were different. One of them would be, I want to be paid $1,000 a day to take orthopedic call. If you get that, I'll sign the contract. Somebody else is like, I got a few years to go to retirement. I just got back from Italy. I'd like more PTO. I'm happy to sign the contract. So one size never fits all in this business. And so if you can have the flexibility to be first, fast, and accurate with their comp, that's why I think Ludi's going to win the race because from everything I've seen, I think they have the superior product.
Excellent. You're talking a lot of experience with physician recruitment and contracting. When you go into an organization and you're providing feedback, what are like the key metrics that you're looking for to help you evaluate their ability to contract and recruit physicians?
Are you talking about the physician or the organization?
The organization.
The organization, I'm looking at the quality of the practice managers. Because you can recruit the best doctors in the world and screw them up horribly with really bad practice management. They might be terrific doctors, but what you're trying to do is I tell people if you could lock the back door, you wouldn't need quite as big of a recruiting front door. If I could just stop people from leaving, my recruiting budget goes down drastically. And so once they come, if you realize that most doctors care about quality, comp, and call, and you can basically provide them what they need in terms of support staff. So a good scenario would be you have no temporary labor, you have all the machinery that you need, you have a great relationship if you're the doctor with the hospital CEO, you like the people you practice with, you have other high quality physicians that you can refer to. That's ideal. A nightmare situation is you have temporary labor, you have a different medical assistant every day, you don't even know the CEO or you're on the outs with the CEO. You really don't like the people you're referring to because they're your patients and you want to see them taken care of, but the people you're referring to are kind of questionable in terms of quality, they're not responsive. And then the real nightmare scenario is when compensation gets screwed up. And it's either not accurate, the coding's not right, my reviews didn't show up, and that leads to physician turnover. So again, you're always shooting. I tell people to try to be the no drama llama in the room, and it's exactly what I told you. It's accurate, it's absolutely transparent, and we want you to retire here. But again, it makes work fun to have an environment like that. It becomes a virtuous cycle. The other is more like a death spiral. And then you have people, what you end up with is a bunch of locums and a bunch of temp labor and a bunch of people that don't stay. And then some of those facilities become what I call radioactive. The word gets out in the physician community, don't go there because they don't have their act together.
That's awesome. Awesome insights there. I might have to steal No Drama Llama.
No Drama Llama.
I'm taking that one there. We'll get you out on this. At the end of the day, you're relaxing with your family. What do they think that you do?
I think they thought for a long time that I was a doctor. And I made it very clear, I am not a doctor. I've never put on a lab coat. I'm not a clinician. But I have tremendous respect for doctors. And so my kids growing up, they're like, you're a doctor, right? Because you go to a hospital every day and that's all you talk about is doctors. And I said, no, my job is to help the doctors. And I really do see myself as a support to them. I never viewed them as employees. I view them as partners. And that's just, it's a formula for long-term relationships. And so, yeah, as they grew up, they understood, okay, Dad's job is to work with doctors and run the offices, but it's no more complicated than that. And I tell people it's actually pretty straightforward. Somebody's got to run the doctor's office. But it's a great way to make a living. And I love the people I work with. And like I said, I just have all the admiration in the world for the doctors. But I think as I used the example earlier, I've never admitted a patient. I've never written a prescription. And so to be surrounded by people that are that well educated and that highly motivated to help other people is just a pleasure. And so when people call or text me and say, who's the best OBGYN or who's the best general surgeon, I can say, well, this is who I use or this is who I recommend. It's just, it's a pleasure. But they finally figured out I'm not a doctor. So.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time and sharing such great insights with us. Thank you so much.
Glad to be here. Thank you.